No. Hi. Every time. Am I a professional? Yes, I am a professional. We're doing this. Oh my God, people. Good heavens, people. Sorry, I watched Pride and Prejudice this week. You may or may not be able to tell. Pride and Prejudice, or as me and my friends aptly call it, PP time. I will not be answering questions about why we call it PP time. Thank you very much, but it's PP time. It is really cozy. Thank you, Inca. I watched PP for the first time because they were so obsessed with it. I was like, okay, fine, I'll watch it and I'll make fun of you all. And then they throw you in with their perfectly executed dress sense and ways of talking and walking through fields, and it just throws you. And then one day you're like, I need to watch Pride and Prejudice. I need to watch PP time. I cannot do my day without PP time. And then you wait forever for it to come up on the stream networks, and they're just not there. So you end up buying it so that you can watch it whenever you want to. I paid £6 for the privilege of always watching what's her face, Keira Knightley, and Thingy Bobbins, Mr. Darcy, do all the words and whatnot. Life comes at you fast. Also, hello everyone, welcome to Saturday. Welcome to the Sipping Two Neeks and That There Saturday. Also, a big thank you. Oh, Crow, 13 months. How you doing, Crow? Dr. Sinwell, 4 months. Enjoy your bean. Crow, thank you for gifting subs. Inca, thank you for the 200 bits. We're on a level 3 hype train already. Sumi and Cass, thank you. And Spooky Spenny, thank you so much for supporting the channel and what we do here. Welcome to Nico Does Audio Things 101. Are you a Neeks? Doesn't matter. You don't have to be a Neeks for this. This works always. Also, if you're watching on the Discord or whatnot, if you're watching this Twitch but you don't have a Twitch account, you can join our lovely Discord. Link is in the doobly-doo. And you can join Kiari, Seely. I think I saw a Gav bouncing around somewhere. Also, because I'm on my Mac, because we're doing audio stuff today, my setup's weird. So I can kind of see what you're saying, but I have to really squint to look at you. So if I don't respond to things, it's not just because I don't like you. I do love you. I don't like you. It's because I love you. Please don't ever leave me. Don't ever leave me. Am I blurry today? Am I blurry again? Is that what's going on? Oh God, I am blurry. Why am I blurry? I'm always this Max and OBS just do not like me. Hang on. Let's see if I can fix this. It's a bit wobbly. You never really know these things. Also, is the music really loud? I don't think it is. It's kind of loud. I'll turn down the music a little bit. Don't want to kill people's ears and whatnot. I'm just gonna set up my PDF. So, welcome to creating an audio drama. I'm sure everyone has heard me say it a million times by now, but I'm making a podcast. I am making an audio drama. The first one I'm making by myself, but I have worked on hundreds of podcasts by this point, predominantly making music. Some of them I do editing myself. Some of them I've even acted in, which, yeah, that was the thing that happens. I generally play Northerners, which may or may not be said. I need to turn this music down because it's killing my ears right now. Hang on. You just go down like that. And then I'm going to turn that bit up there so it's not too quiet for you guys. Now I can hear myself speak. Yeah, I'm releasing an album, and I had the really good idea, I hope it's a good idea, of making an audio drama with the music album at the same time. So it's all going to get released all at once. February 2022 is the initial date, but that may or may not change. It's production. Production is very hard to estimate, but that's the goal I've set myself. With that said, because I've worked in so many podcasts, I have either done the job myself or I have seen the job done by someone else to an incredibly high standard that I felt comfortable enough to be able to do my own podcast. My mods are yelling at me. Mods, what are we saying? Are we all good? I'm a bit blurry. Yeah, I was a bit blurry. Bit blurry, but it's okay. Don't worry, I'm no more a blur. So, because we talk of dreams, one of our missions is creatives helping other creatives. I want to show you as much of the process as I can. I can do this because I own the podcast. I own everything that comes in, which means I get to show you what I'd like to show you. I always do ask permission and whatnot. I'm not kind of blindsidingly just shoving people in and say, hey, I'm showing everyone your raw audio. But yeah, it's going to be fun. Not many people show the behind the scenes of how to make an audiodrama. One, because a lot of us are just winging it and people don't really want to let on that they don't have a clue what they're doing, everything that happens just by pure chance, which I get. Or two, in the case, because I work for Rusty Quill, we have quite a well-established production crew that we can't really give away trade secrets. However, I can show you how I edit outside of Rusty Quill, and I'm going to show you how to do an audiodrama my way. With that said, I'm going to get started. This is a... These streams won't be longer than maybe an hour and a half because I don't want to overload you with information. I have included PDF files, which if one of the mods can do ! Audiodrama, you'll get the PDF files of the streams. You still probably need to watch the stream at the same time because I've not overburdened the PDFs, but we're going to get through it. Okay, have I got my PDF on the right page? I do. Nope. Wait, the wrong one. There we go. We're completely... Oh, hey, Wiccanavo, gift sub. Oh, thank you, Cassie, going to gift sub. Creating an audiodrama. Part 1. Simple enough. Any questions so far? No, I'm going to continue. So, today, I'm going to give you everything up until the editing, and then I'll kind of give you a brief overview of the editing side, and then we'll go fully into the editing next stream. Editing may be several streams in itself. It's by far the most important part of podcasts. You can get away with a lot, but you cannot skimp on editing. Bad editing will make or break a podcast, quite simply. It doesn't matter how good your artwork is, how good the scripts are, how amazing your actors are. If you don't have a good edit, it's going to show. I need to take my puffer. So, we are going to go today, number 1, cast and crew. I'm going to show you the essential jobs you're going to need in your audiodrama and the kind of extras, which will be good to have, but there may not be budget for it or you may not have the skills yourself to do. Kind of costs and workarounds of hiring people, things you kind of get around with by either licensing deals or doing things yourselves, or trade swapping. I'll go into detail with that. Number 3 is script editing and casting. This isn't necessarily editing the script to make it a good script, but it's editing the script so that it makes sense for a podcast and it's easier to cast and make it easier for your editors and directors and actors to work with the script. So I'm not going to tell you today how to write a good audiodrama because I do not have that skill. But what I am going to tell you about is how I can convert scripts into what works for every other single part. So I can't give you the initial idea of what your audiodrama is going to be about, but I can give you the tools of trades to kind of make sure your idea gets fully fleshed out and you've got a fighting chance for it to make it the whole way through. 4, I'll be going into recording and directing. So recording setups, remote recording, how I direct, how I make sure my actors are comfortable, what makes sense from a directing point of view, what makes sense from an editing point of view, and what makes sense as the entire picture. And then number 5, I'll briefly show you my folder structure. I'll show you the software I use to edit, and I'll kind of give you a very brief overview of every single step of the vocal edit. It's quite intensive. To put it into terms, I would say a 15-minute episode of an audio drama, if you're going like all out, the vocal cut alone will take about 20 hours. If you're trying to get the most pristine audio out of it, will quite easily take you 20 hours. Editing just takes the longest. And editors will get very keenly, intimate's the wrong words, we will know the voice actors inside and out. They will know their pacing, they will know their intonations, they will know when they've either drank water or not drank water. Editors know actors very, 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 very well. Especially when I used to work in the Magnus Archives, I've listened to hundreds of hours of Jonathan Sims. I've had my fill of Jonathan Sims. I love the guy. I think he's incredible, but I've had a lot of Jonathan Sims. Anyway, is everyone cool so far? Saying Beeps, Your Radio and Biscuit Factory aren't masterpieces of writing. Listen, even the Biscuit Factory took me 6 hours to do. Can you see the screen? But I just got to check me on stream that you've seen the right. Cool. Yeah, you are. And there I am there. Cool. My mum just walked in and went, "Oh, he's so professional today," when she saw the PowerPoint. Yeah, I used Canva and then I used the artwork that Bruce made as well. So, cast and crew. I've already said this before, but even though every part of an audio drama is important, your production crew will make or break the podcast. Hey, Kareem, how are you doing, Kareem? Nice to see you, Kareem. Hope you're doing well. Welcome. Hope you're having a lovely Saturday. Cast and crew. So some of this will be obvious. Some of them you may have not seen before. I'll go through every single step and exactly what their roles entail. So first and foremost, if it's an audio drama, it's going to be fiction. You're going to have writers. The writers aren't necessarily podcast writers. It could be that you found a fiction in another format, like a book, for instance. It's whatever the initial text is. So some people I know, with some of the podcasts I work on, like Shadows at the Door, they're half original and half reworks of M.R. James stories. So Mark Nixon, who is the creator, he finds M.R. James stories that he wants to adapt into podcast audio drama. So very simply, those are your writers, those are your fiction. The next step is script editors. Script editors kind of fall into two different jobs. You've got script editors who are editing for the sake of the fiction itself, that the fiction in the script form makes sense from a theatrical point of view. And then you've got script editing that will make sense for a recording point of view and an editing point of view. There's a lot of give and take. Sometimes you will find you will have an amazing script, but either the cost is too high or it's just illogical to do from an editing point of view. So to pull it in simple terms, you may have written a really good fiction script. You may have a really good script. Say you have 6 characters in that episode and you have 4 characters in one scene. If you start off with one person in one scene, that's fine. Every single time you add an extra person, the work doubles and triples. So the work of 2 actors will be 3 times the work of 1 actor to edit. That's something to keep in mind, especially if you're editing yourself, but also if you've hired editors. Editors you'll generally pay by the hour instead of a fixed rate. So you may be cutting down on character interactions. You may find that you can do a scene with just 2 people in it rather than having the entire cast in one scene. Not only that, but from a soundscaping point of view, if you're having footsteps in that scene and you've got 6 characters walking together, trying to get the footsteps to sync up to what those characters are doing is hard. I can't do voice acting. I can do a little bit of voice acting. I can't do soundscape editing. I've outsourced the soundscape editing for my own because I can't do it. It's a magical skill that I have absolutely no talent in whatsoever. Not only that, you will kind of find with audio drama, it's good to bear in mind if your characters are doing something in a scene, you have to replicate that with how the actors are speaking. So say it's a fight scene, say two characters are fighting each other. You can't just record the actors saying the lines and then doing punches underneath. You've got to get the actors to kind of do the grunts and the sighs and the impacts and whatnot themselves to make it believable. Because it feels too uncanny valley to do it otherwise. You can't have them saying, "I'm going to kill you now," and underneath you've just got like Batman, original Batman sound effects going on. It doesn't meld well together. So that's something to keep in mind with script editing. Especially if the recording's not going to be done together, if they're recorded in isolation, it makes it a lot harder. The producer. Many a day I've spent punching myself in a recording booth. Kareem, knowing the characters you've played, that actually doesn't surprise me. Producers. Everyone's heard of a producer. Very few people know what a producer actually does. And let me tell you, now that I'm making my own audio drama, my respect for producers, what started off as high, has gone catastrophically through the roof into the never to be seen again. Producers, oh my god, a good producer can like just save you so much pain. So, producers you can kind of see as the people who run around behind the scenes. They're the ones who make sure the scripts are ready. They make sure the actors have the scripts. They may be doing the casting themselves. They make sure the actors have recording set up. So because it's a podcast, we do remote recordings nowadays. They check that the actors are comfortable, they're set up right, that they are free to do the recording at the time, the date that you need them to. If you're giving them equipment yourself, say an actor doesn't have the microphone that you want them to use, then you have to organise shipping it to them. They make sure the spreadsheets are up to date. They make sure that there's enough time to do everything. They make sure if there's a delay in one part of it, then you will be able to make it up for it later in the production. They're the ones who can pretty much tell you whether your podcast is going to get done in time or not, and can cut off a lot of headaches and problems before it happens. Producers, lifebloods. One of the producers I've had the privilege of working with, Lorianne Davis, who is the producer for Rusty Crow's Magnus Archives. To be blunt, without Laurie, I highly doubt Magnus Archives Season 5 could have been done remote recording and could have been done at all. What Laurie did is beyond superhero levels. I don't know how she did it, but she did it. So if you're thinking Magnus Archives is sounding good and incredible, make sure to thank Laurie, because, yeah. we can do editing, we can do acting, we can do directing, but if you don't have a producer there to keep us all running together, it's going to fall through the cracks. Producing is hard and very satisfying when it goes smoothly, but it's an absolute headache. Yeah. The next one, directors. I'm sure people know who directors are by now, but they're basically the ones in charge. Maybe another name for director is a showrunner. They're the ones calling the shots. So everyone kind of goes to the director to make sure that their work is good and can be signed off. So they're the ones who be asking the script editors to make the changes, the writers make the changes, the editors to make changes. Predominantly, they'll be the one in the recording scenes asking actors to do the takes, making sure the actors have the right emotions, making sure they're getting the best out of the situation. A good director, in my mind, isn't necessarily the one who gets the best. Let me put it this way. I firmly don't believe you're going to get the best take out of your actors if you're making them do takes again and again and again and again and again. And the morale of your team, your crew and cast, if you're pushing them to the limits to try and get them to do perfection and whatnot by constantly asking for edits, I don't think it works. I honestly believe the best directors, the best showrunners, are the ones that play to their team's strengths, are the ones who have flexibility. So, take for instance, you may have casted a character and you chose the actor for them, and in the audition it was very way, and then when it comes to the actual recording day and they're going through the old lines, the actor may say, can we change this line to something that fits better? So for basic terms, say they're a northerner and the script is written in British Queen's English, for lack of a better term, they may change lines and whatnot. I think a good director will let them do that, so long as it makes sense plot-wise. And also allowing the actors to have the freedom to play the character that they believe it should be played, I think not only makes it more unique, but it makes the actors a lot more happy. It gives them a lot more creative input, and it makes the project go from a paid gig to a passion project where everyone's giving it everything. So yeah, if you're being a director yourself, if you're being a showrunner yourself, I highly recommend what the common term is: don't be an asshole. Be good to your cast and crew, and they'll be good back to you. It sounds obvious, but there's so many fallacies in the industry where people think they have to be an ignorant person to be a good director or whatnot, and it's just not the case. It's just not the case. So be a nice person. Actors, straightforward. Music composer, they make the music. Vocal editors are your editors who edit the actor's audio. Soundscape editors are the ones who do everything else, so the Foley work. If you got the scene them walking down the beach, they're the one who's going to be making the beach sounds and the water waves and the seagulls, and they're the magical people, because I don't know how they do it so well, but they do it incredibly well, and I'm very lucky that I know some of them. Music editors, these aren't the ones who make the music, but they're the ones who edit it into the show. So not only is it adjusting the volume of the music, it's deciding where the music should be played. Sometimes music editors will ask the composers to give them stems. Stems are basically the music broken up. So one stem will be like the drums and the bass of a song. The next stem will be like the guitar. The top stem will be the vocals. Music editors sometimes won't use every single part of a song. Sometimes they only want the drum and the bass for a scene. That's quite common. It doesn't really happen too much in podcasts, but it does happen in TV and film. But it can occasionally happen, so just be aware of it. But music editors generally make sure the music fits the podcast. Something to probably say: make sure whatever job you're doing, you're not trying to make it the best for yourself, but you're doing what's best for the podcast. So you may make an incredible vocal cut edit, but it may not make sense for the podcast, because sometimes you don't need the voice actors to be shouting or the voice actors to be loud. Sometimes there's explosions, sometimes they're muffled, sometimes they're sleeping. You have to make sure what you're giving the next person is what makes sense the best for the podcast. There's no I in team, there's no I in podcast. You have to be working to make sure the podcast is the best it possibly can be. It always kind of sounds like you are making a sacrifice when you do that, but you're not. People notice your work more when it makes sense for the podcast. Yeah, you can write an amazing song. You can have a really good monologue. But if it's not blending the rest of the podcast, it doesn't fit the podcast. And when someone's listening to it, it breaks the immersion and it actually comes off as worse. So I highly recommend thinking about the greater good, because it does bode well for you. Trust me on that. I've been in this for about 6 years now. I have gotten more work by just saying I worked in this podcast, by saying specifically what I did, because people want to know you have the podcast at mind. It's not just about your own specific art. Yeah. The masterer. The masterer is a very generic term. Masters change from podcast to podcast. You can probably, the best way to kind of describe a masterer is say you're working in a restaurant and the chefs are preparing the dishes. The masterer can be seen as like the head chef at the front of the kitchen who's checking the meals before they go out to the customers. So they're the ones checking that all the food's hot. They're checking that each dish is what it should be like, and they will be making the final changes should there be any changes. They may ask for further edits or cuts and whatnot, but they're basically the ones doing quality control. In music terms, sometimes mastering means making it as loud as physically possible. That's not really the case with audio dramas. It's more the sense that you want it to kind of be the vocals that are kind of similar level the whole way through, and that the louder scenes are louder than the quiet scenes. So if you know, say you're doing a horror podcast and say there's a jump scare in it, you want to make sure if the director's calling for a jump scare, then the audio's set up for a jump scare. If you're wanting a slow burn horror, then you've got to make sure the music level and the soundscape level is at the right volume to make sure it happens. They may also request pacing changes, so maybe the characters have been edited to be talking too quickly over each other, so that may change. But yeah, basically quality control, as well as doing like the final compression and final EQing and things. Making the products that makes everyone feel like they shine is absolutely the best feeling. Yeah, I agree. Sorry I've not been reading everything. Thank you, Anonymous Gifter, for the gift sub. Thank you ever so much. Yeah, and then artist, the person who makes the artwork, a copywriter. In this sense, a copywriter is the people who are doing the podcast blurbs, who will probably be writing the description of podcasts, who will be doing like the content warnings, who may be rewriting your press releases, everything else. Sensitivity reader. This is something that I think if there's room in the budget for it, people need to have a sensitivity reader. It pains me to say, but it is quite a new job in the audio drama world. But they're the ones who will watch out for things. So it's not just content warnings, but it's things like, it's not only just watching out for people, like say you have an audience and you have people who have arachnophobia. Sensitivity readers will know to place out for that, but the writers may not necessarily think about that because they've dealt with horror their entire life and they've become desensitized to it. The sensitivity readers will check the content warnings and kind of give an extensive list where appropriate, but they also check that the tone of the podcast is the tone that you want to have. They will, quite simply, they will make you check your privilege. If you are producing an audio drama, saying you're British and you've seen this from a British point of view, you may have skimmed over other beliefs, other cultures, not necessarily maliciously, but you may have done it from an ignorant, privileged point of view. The sensitivity reader will point out when that happens and would request either further edits and basically say, hey, this is a thing, are you happy for this to be a thing? They're incredibly useful. I highly recommend them. They are, yeah. The ones I get to work with, I'm so very thankful I get to work with them, and they make me a better human. But also take that. If I can speak candidly for a moment, because I think it kind of scares people when they first think about content warnings and having the sensitivity reader. My belief is that so long as things are appropriately notated, that you have the content warnings and you are not being malicious, like you're not being racist, to be blunt. I think it's perfectly acceptable to have things that have spiders, so long as you tag it with arachnophobia, for instance. It becomes what tends to happen the first time people have sensitivity readers is they don't want to cause offense. They don't want to offend anyone. So then they drastically change their story, their fiction, to make sure it doesn't happen. And that sounds good on paper, but then what you get left with is something basically that feels like it was made for toddlers, to be frank. Fiction, a lot of fiction deals with grief. It deals with horror. It deals with problems in relationships and stuff. And that can be good so long as it's done properly. Because life is that. You don't have content warnings in life. Fiction a lot of the times resembles life. And it's good that you have these topics in fiction so long as it's been approached in the correct way. I did this the first time I started streaming. I started to think about the games I used to play in streams, and I very much closed in before Helen, who's a sensitivity worker I work with, told me you shouldn't be doing that. You should be addressing when these things come up and talking about it properly, but it's not something to be shied away from. So I keep using arachnophobia because it's an easy one for people to realise. If you have a story with spiders in, make sure it's tagged properly, and by all means keep the spiders in if that's the story you want to tell, because you're not a bad person by having spiders in your story. It's very, very important to state that you are not a bad person for having specific content warnings and triggers in your fiction. It more depends on how you treat these subjects. That's quite a heavy topic, I'm aware. It shook me sideways when I first heard about it, and I want to make sure that it's okay for you to feel scared at first, or shaken up about it, panicky about it. It's fine. You will eventually find your feet. You eventually figure out what's the best way to do it. And I think also just being in constant contact and making your Twitter feed diverse and the people you talk about diverse, you will find your feet. Yeah, content warnings aren't there to make something bad or warn people off. They're there to make people aware and to be able to consume the work safely. Yeah, I completely agree. Am I good? Oh, people are being nice and twirling retweeting things. Okay. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts, the costs, the physical costs of a podcast. So number one is going to be wages. How are people going to get paid? The easiest way to do a podcast, to do an audio drama, is to learn how to edit and produce it yourself. It's not the most exciting job in the world. There will be times you will get absolutely irritated and want to punch a wall at times. Sometimes you want to eat your entire body weight in ice cream. Sometimes you never want to hear a person speak again. But when it goes well, when you have a finished product, it is so worth it. The most costly thing in any audio drama is editing. So I highly, highly recommend learning how to vocal edit. You don't necessarily have to do soundscaping. There's ways you can get around soundscaping. You can just have music playing in the background and make it like a radio show almost, or you can just read fiction, but you need to be able to edit people's vocals well. Because if that's the thing people notice, if an actor's too quiet, if an actor has too many mouth sounds, if the space that we're recording in is too echoey, people notice this from the get-go. Having a good editor, having good editing will make your podcast go from an okay podcast to being one of the best, finest produced things in the entire world. So that's one of them. If you want to have an idea of how much editors cost, well, let me put it this way. So if you're doing an audio drama, a 20-minute audio drama, you're going to be looking at anything between 12 to 20 hours of vocal cut editing alone. Not all editing, just vocal cut editing. The lowest wage that I get paid for such a job is currently £12.50 an hour, which then if you think it being 12 hours, if you think it's going to be 20 hours, you're paying a vocal editor, myself, £250 for that one vocal edit, which is quite hefty. If your audio drama is 10 episodes long, 20 episodes long, that cost can raise dramatically. The easiest way to do that is to learn how to vocal edit. Or, if you're bloody clever and you know people who are vocal editors, trade swap. So, say you're a writer, say you're an artist, and you know a vocal editor who's looking for an artist, propose a little trade swap, which is absolutely fine, so long as you're both costing things properly and you're both okay with the deal. That's completely acceptable and fine. It's what a lot of people do in the industry. Trade swapping happens a lot. Actors. Oh, a good thing to point out as well. So there's two ways. Either you have someone who saved up a lot of money and is funding this through themselves. Maybe they have a Patreon, maybe they have the Ko-Fi. They have the lump sum all ready to go to pay people. The other way is Kickstarters. I'm sure a lot of people here know about Kickstarters, but make sure you know from the get-go, if you're an actor and you're joining an Audiodrama and they're saying, hey, yeah, be fine, we're going to get paid for the Kickstarter, make it quite clear that you're okay with that. I would highly recommend not doing work until that Kickstarter is successful, because I've heard horror stories of people doing the work for free because they've been told that they'll get the money through a Kickstarter, and then the Kickstarter fails and no one gets paid, and you've already done the labor and you've probably signed something or said something to say that the director can use your work. Please don't. If they're going the Kickstarter route, I highly recommend not working until you get paid. Something I do myself with this podcast especially, I make sure everyone who works gets paid first before they do the work. So the actors, the writers, the artists, they all get paid before I've even begin working. Before, regardless of what happens to the podcast. Say I decide the podcast's not going to work, I can sleep at night knowing that the people I've hired to do work have been paid. Do you know how common trade swapping is in audiodramas? It's, yeah, record after crowdfunding successful. Trade swapping is quite common. For instance, Shadows at the Door. I've done trade swaps in the past. I've given them music in return for them checking over previous stuff I've done in other jobs. For this podcast specifically, I have trade swapped soundscaping for me to do music. It's very, very common. The kind of killer thing is you tend to only find trade swapping happening by people who are already successful in the industry. So like, people will happily trade swap with me because I've done soundtracks for a lot of podcasts already and I've got the proof to back it up that I can do that. It's harder to get a good trade swap if nobody's done it before. Harder, but not impossible. Especially in the audiodrama world, because to be quite honest, it's very rare that an audiodrama is profitable. That's why a lot of audiodramas go the Kickstarter routes. It almost becomes the only feasible way. There's very few who have made it. Like No Sleep are doing it successfully profitable. Rusty Crow are doing it profitable. Apart from that, it's quite hard to find ones who are doing it. Unwell's doing it as well. So a way to kind of keep the costs down is to do trade swaps. So you find people saying, yeah, I'll write for your podcast if you edit mine, and you do it that way. Another way, this is quite helpful for artists, writers, and musicians. If you're hiring, say you're hiring a writer, say you told the writer either, please write me an episode for my podcast, or you may tell them, can I use one of your fiction works that you've already done? A good way to save money is to license the work as opposed to owning the work. So something I do, what I've done myself for this podcast, is I've gotten the writers to write me original stories, but they still own the stories themselves. So the way I'm doing it is that I can use their writing for this podcast and I can sell the podcast or do what I want with the podcast any way I want. but they also have the option to do with that fiction exactly what they want to do as well. They own their work still. So if they want to record it again and do it in another podcast, they absolutely can. If they're going to publish that script in a book form and do it that way, they absolutely can as well. That's a good way to save money. If you are hiring a musician, a lot of musicians get paid in two ways. One is an upfront fee, and then two, they may say, okay, I'm happy to do the podcast for this amount of money on the basis that I own the music and I get to get all the earnings from the soundtrack getting played. So say you finish a podcast, they'll release the soundtrack on Spotify, Bandcamp, iTunes, what have you. They would again get all the revenue coming from that album being streamed and bought and whatnot. It's little ways of doing it. Then you still have to pay people. I don't think there's any way of getting around that. You will need to pay people, need to pay them right. But it's a way of it's a way of saving money. If you're happy with people still owning their work. In terms of actors and wages vary dramatically and massively. Not only, it's not just cost per hour, but it's how much work you're going to give them, right? So if you have an actor who's playing the main character for one episode but they're not doing anything else, the fee for that one-off appearance will be higher than, say, if you had a character doing all 6 episodes. So you may find an actor saying, I will charge... Say they're doing a one-off script and they say, okay, I want to get paid £50 for this thing. If you turned out you were using that character for every episode, they may then say, okay, I want to get paid £20 per hour, because they've already done the research and the practice for that character. They know how to get into character quicker. They're not trying to get into character every single time because they've already figured it out. Music's like that a little in a way as well. If you're hiring a musician for one song, you'll find that cost of one song is higher compared to if you got them to do like 5 or 6 songs. So for instance, I charge £100 for an intro. But additional tracks, I may only charge £20 or £30 because I've already figured out the style of the podcast, of the soundtrack. So additional tracks don't take me as long to make because I've already done the groundwork and the research. Yeah, copyright stuff hurts. You kind of find a lot of the time people do, lack of a better term, gentlemen's agreements. For this podcast, because I am being transparent, there's a lot of trade swapping going on. Writers have already told you they own the work. I've also paid each writer $100 for 2,500 words and the process that they own the work. For actors, main characters get £50. Because it's 2 characters in a story, the next actor gets £40, or £2 per finished minute. So I kind of pay them a lump sum, and then I tell them, say £50 is equivalent of £2 of £50 is equivalent of 25 minutes of finished audio. I tell them if I end up using 26 minutes, then they're going to get the money after finished editing. £2 per finished minute seems to be roughly the trade standard at the moment for audio dramas. It does vary a lot, but that's kind of the figure I've seen sent to me from the podcasts I work on. I don't want to name names because I'm not sure if they're happy with me saying which podcast specifically pays their actors what, but £2 per finished minute seems to be the way to go. But I always make sure you're going to get paid a lump sum first. So even say the main character gets paid £50, but say that actor's only going to be doing 5 minutes of finished audio, they're still going to get paid the £50. So that it's worthwhile for them to do so. It's not the highest, but it's just about doable. Yeah, it's basically the equivalent of paying someone just about the standard wage. My hope is that if I do another podcast again, I can pay more, but I've had to keep the way it is because the funding has came directly out of myself and through Patreon and whatnot. I've not done the Kickstarter route because, quite simply, I don't like doing Kickstarters unless I have something to prove. So I didn't want to make the community have blind faith in me. I wanted to make sure I can deliver what I say I'm going to deliver, which is why I've been sneaky, which is why I set up a Patreon and Ko-Fi and a Twitch and whatnot. All the donations that you gave to me, they've been paying the mods, but they've predominantly been paying this podcast. I'm very privileged to be able to say that. I know I'm very lucky to say that, but that's the way I've done it. Recording. So generally, voice actors will probably have their own setup. I know Kareem has an incredible. Kareem, you've got like a recording booth. I've seen you built it on Twitter. You've got like almost like a TARDIS thing. You open it up and you close it, and it's like it's completely soundproofed and everything. It's really cool. You usually need a good track record to do a Kickstarter and in the ad space. Yeah, in the Audiodrama space. Yeah, you kind of need to have the people to trust what you're doing to say you can deliver an Audiodrama, which is why I've done it this way. Session booth. Yeah, so some people have session booths, like your Kareem. Other people have what we affectionately call blanket forts, where they will literally just chuck duvets around the place and they will sit in their duvet and they'll record. You don't have to break the bank with recording stuff. You need... Can you see it? I'll point it up. This microphone that I'm using right now cost £90. And then I've got an audio interface that cost £80. And then the recording software is free. So it's £170 for a basic goods setup. I'm talking goods setup. Not cheap, but not expensive. You can get decent sounds by spending less than 200 quid. And then even more, if you go on Gumtree or Craigslist and whatnot, chances are you're going to find good microphones for sale, because everyone tried to do a podcast under lockdown and then gave up, and now they've got this recording equipment that they're trying to get rid of. So now is a good time to buy recording equipment because people have given up on trying to make a podcast. Tips from Neeks. Yeah, so cables, soundproofing, audio interface. Soundproofing, you can literally just use duvets. If you're professional like Kareem, you will have a recording booth. I've seen it variations. Just make sure they are setting up properly, because sometimes they'll have a really good microphone, but there'll be an echo in the room, so the voice sounds really echoey. Like my voice right now will sound quite echoey because I've not put cushions and dampers and blankets everywhere. Third, the most important thing is mental health. This is specifically to yourself, you creating the audio drama. You most likely are not just doing an audio drama for 3 months. You're most likely trying to create an audio drama whilst you have a full-time job or whilst you're doing client work or life. Factor in not just the time working on the audio drama, but downtime. It is detrimental to your health and to the podcast if you're not factoring in time to sleep, to eat, to rest, to make sure you're socializing. You will burn out very, 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 very quickly. And you won't be producing your best work. You feel like you are because you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into it. But in reality, you've just exhausted yourself too much. You do your best work when you are at your best, happy, healthy self. So please, I assure you, playing Red Dead Redemption 2 for 3 hours after you've done a recording session is the best thing you can do. And plus, Red Dead Redemption 2 is fun. Acoustic treatment. Thank you, Kareem. Yeah, acoustic treatment's very, very helpful. Yes, I don't know the technical terms. I just know what they look like. You'll find that a lot. So yeah, also know, just because you may have said on social media, my podcast is going to get released at a certain date, doesn't mean you have to stick to that. I find the audio drama space, the communities, they're happy for things to get pushed back so long as you're taking care of yourself and the quality is going to be staying high. They would much rather have something that is finished and sounds great than something that's rushed and sounds bad. So please make sure you're taking care of yourself. And a mantra that I keep on telling myself a lot, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to exist. So if you're fretting and worrying over a scene and you can't get the edit right, chances are you're overthinking it. You do not need to be worrying that much, especially when it's your first go. People aren't looking for perfection, they're looking for something real. If you stick to what you wanted to do with your own original idea, your art, that's what people need to see. That's a big reason why I do Eat Talker Dreams, why I'm pushing my music so far, because the music is what I believe in and what I want to put out in the world. And my music isn't perfect. It's not the most cleanest, highest produced thing in the world. But it matters to me that it exists. So, yeah, it's good to know that when you're trying to do... Bye, Kareem. Thank you for coming, Kareem. It's good to know that when you're creating audio dramas. Okay. So, script, editing, and casting. Casting. When you've got characters, when you're casting characters, get the writers to give you wiggle room. So don't have a character that's precisely 25 years old. Have a character that's anywhere between 20 to 30 years old. If your story is set in Glasgow, Scotland, try and get them to change that to Scotland. So long as it makes sense to the plot of the story. You will find it incredibly hard to get very specific actors for your audio drama. Very difficult. I have already crucially cut down available actors what I can use because I'm using predominantly British actors. I didn't want to have American actors doing a British accent. I wanted British actors. And that already dramatically decreases the size. Also, representation matters. So if you have a trans male character, it has to be played by a trans male actor. Yeah, I mean it makes sense, but if you have a black character, they need to be played by a black person. If you have someone from a minority, they need to be played by a minority person. Don't whitewash. You will get slammed, first of all, but second of all, you're right to get slammed because people need representation. This said, it is borderline impossible to show representation for every single minority and LGBT in one episode, in one podcast. You cannot do it. If you're trying to fit in people with mental disabilities, people who are on the LGBT spectrum, and people who are from minority backgrounds all in one character, it's going to feel fake. And you've got too many strong traits of that character fighting for attention. It doesn't work. So what I'd recommend is focusing on one thing per character. So if you want someone who is autistic, focus on the autistic. If you want someone who is from a minority background, focus on that. If you want to have an ace couple, focus on that. Don't try and do everything at once because it can't be done. And with that said, I will also say it is impossible to please everyone. Take heart in knowing you are trying to do the best that you can and you're trying to make a better place, but know with the way the internet is, you are gonna get negative feedback regardless of what you do. That just happens. You will be amazed, however, how much it won't affect you if you know in your heart of hearts you're doing the best that you possibly can and you're trying to do the best for underrepresented groups. Are people talking about baking right now? Yeah, when I use my wife's inside the first one, I think she ticks out the boxes. But yeah, so I think especially a lot of people who are white, cis, straight, and especially people who are British or American or Canadian, Australian, panic because they want to include representation, but they don't know how to do it. So they either do the smart thing, which is hire people who the writers from these modes, or they attempt to do it themselves and they overcompensate and they kind of stumble over their own feet a lot. So my recommendation is to kind of focus. I say my recommendation, this is coming from the sensitivity readers I work with. They tell me if you want to give representation to a person, you need to focus on that. Don't try and tick every single box under the sun, because it's a losing battle. The script itself, I've kind of lost myself there. Yeah, with script editing. So I've said this before, but if you have a good script and it makes sense from a plot point of view, I just need to see the chat. It may not make sense from an editor's point of view. So it may be worth, if you've hired editors, if you're not editing it yourself, to get the editors to look at the script so they can tell you whether this is going to make more work for the editors, whether they should change things. A lot of the times, it's such a quick fix that will save you hours of work. So for instance, what's a good instance? Say you have someone who's running down the street, and the script says this person's running and yelling something. If you just change that to, this guy stood and yelled it at a person instead, that saves a lot of time, that you don't have to have the actor to run and pant and do the panting thing whilst they're acting. You don't have to do the footsteps. You don't have to do the soundscape. It's all quite static, and it's a lot easier to edit and do. That will save you upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in editing, because it takes a long time to do those scenes. So something to be aware of. And as I said before, check if you need all the characters to be in that scene. Do you need 5 people in that scene, or could you get away with 2 or 3? Sometimes you can get away with 1, because it just dramatically increases the editing time. If you've got the money for it, by all means do it the way you want to do it. But this is things that every single podcast does to make sense, from not only just from a money point of view, but if you have a deadline and you need this podcast to be done to this deadline, you need to save editing hours, because it makes no sense to spend 50 hours for like 2 minutes of audio. Yeah. And then also, whilst you're casting, bear in mind people's time zones. Bear in mind the recording setup. So you may have a really good actor, but maybe they've never done home recording before. You need to factor that in as well. A lot of voice actors have had to learn how to use technology during lockdown. Most of them have managed to be able to do it successfully, but there's still people who aren't technologically apt to do so. So factor that in as well. Sometimes you can teach people how to do their recording setup online through a Skype call, but yeah, just keep that in mind too. I think it's the last one. Recording and directing. Happy actors equals good recording. People come first always. In other words, don't be an asshole. Your actors come first. Make sure your actors are comfortable with the characters they're playing. Make sure your actors are happy with the scenes they're recording. Make sure they're rested. Make sure they're comfortable. Make sure you give them breaks. Don't try and just rush through a recording session. Make sure because they need to take time to calm down and then get themselves back in the zone for this next scene, the next scene, the next scene. People are people. They're not robots. They're not machines. And if you are rushing through, they tend to fall off. Not only because they've been talking so much, so their voice gets raspier, but there's not as much emotion because they're tired. So having breaks, even though it's a longer recording session, is the optimal way to go. Setup. Number 1, make sure the acoustic treatment of the room is good. So make sure they've got blanket forts, and make sure their room is quiet. Make sure the volume of their microphone is good as well. The worst thing to happen is clipping. Clipping is when they're speaking too loud into the microphone and their audio gets distorted. You may hear this in podcasts when people are shouting. The audio gets quite crackly, quite overdriven. It feels too hoarse. It's hard to fix clips audio, so it's easy to work with quieter audio. They don't need to be loud, because you can make the audio louder in the editing. It just has to make sure the room is quiet and that you're getting the entire dynamic range of what the actor's doing. Also make sure they have good microphone technique. I have terrible microphone technique, especially when I'm doing Twitch streaming, because I keep moving away and moving back and doing that and waving my hands about. That's a thing. Make sure the actors remove jewelry. Make sure they're not acting with the hands and rubbing the hands, because that gets picked up by the microphone. Crime Panda, quick question. For long scripts, do you need to read it through the way twice or break up into sections and record each section twice? So the way I do it, I record each scene twice. I go scene by scene as opposed to doing the entire thing. Not only that, I don't really record in chronological order. I value actors' time a lot. So sometimes I may split the recording day into 2 days. I'll have some actors record some scenes separately to another recording session where actors do a different one. Sometimes I'll get the actors to do narration on a different day. So long as the actors are comfortable with what they're doing and they have been briefed properly and they feel like they're going to get the best out of themselves for the character, I go by what the actor wants to do. But yeah. So to kind of put it through, what I've done for this podcast specifically, is I do 2 takes. 2 takes per scene, and each scene is done one at a time. So scene 1, I'll get the actors to do it the way they want to do it. So without me doing any directing notes, I've got the recording set up. I will just tell the actors, act this scene how you want it to be acted, and then let them go without any notes. Once take 1 is done, then I'll discuss with the actors about what I liked, what maybe we want to change, if there's anything they want to change, and then we go from there. And then once take 2 is done, then I may ask for some minimal pickups. So sometimes I'll ask them to say a line a bit differently. Sometimes if the character is doing something in that scene, like walking down some stairs or maybe they're cooking, I'll make them kind of act that motion, because their voice will sound different if they're like stirring a pot as opposed to just standing still. Little things like that. You do tend to pick up on it. Something I'll ask as well is, this is a directorial thing. Some podcasts have an actor do a line and then the next actor to do the next line, and they don't like overlap, or they don't like it being reactionary. I quite like it being reactionary. So say I have a character saying one line, I'll get the other actor to kind of do sighs and approvals or coughs or stutters or things that's reacting off that line in an audio way. Because in TV and film, they won't say anything, but they'll kind of act it, so you can kind of tell when an actor feels like taken aback by a line, but you don't hear that, which is why you have to do it in podcast form. You have to be emphasizing what the actors are what the characters are feeling, because you've only got your ears to go if you're not seeing it. Do I have the actors review the whole episode script before starting takes from your scenes? What I've done, I give the actors director's notes before recording. So I'll go through it scene by scene, and I'll kind of say, with this episode 1, Faye's in it, I told Faye, this is what your character's feeling in this scene. And I'll give them like cliff notes. I'll give them like 2 sentences so they can get into the zone for that character. It kind of depends on the actor as well. Some actors want to read your script in entirety and practice and do it. Other actors may only read it once. It all just depends on what their own personal workflow is. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think the best way is just what they want to do. Some actors, some of them even don't even want to read the scripts before the actual day. Sometimes they like to get that initial emotions from the script. So they may be reading the scene minutes before they actually record the scene. But it's make it feel more natural. You don't wait for it to react in real life too. Yeah, so you want it to feel more natural, and believe me, stutters and grunts and little sighs make a scene feel much more believable than you actually think so. Yeah, you're going to notice this a lot more now when you listen to audio dramas, but yeah. Also, trust your actors for their own opinions and requests as well. They are the professionals in this. They're the ones who've done this a long time. Put a lot of trust in your actors. There's a reason why you hired them in the first place. and it makes it feel like a more of a personal project fun if you do it that way, as opposed to you just directing what you want. And that's why it's good to have leeway, because you may have got the script and you may have heard it one way in your head, but if you play to an actor's strengths and you find what works best for your actor, you're going to get a much more believable, much better quality product out of it. Hans Zimmer, the music composer who's done like Batman and Lion King and Interstellar, every movie, he's done loads of movies. Even when he's recording the music, he will write it one way in the demo, and then he'll get a session musician, he'll get a guitarist or cello, and he'll tell them, play it the way you want it to be played. Play it what makes sense to you, and then he will use that instead. Creatives, artists are incredible people, and they bring things unique to projects. And you should hone in on what makes it unique, because that stops you from being generic, and that stops you from going from what's already been made. You cannot compete by being a copycat. You can compete by being unique, because nobody else is you. Nobody else can do what you do, because you are the only you. Focus on that. You're going to win you're going to win, and you're going to be much more happier that way as well. This is something I've run into. So what do you do if someone stumbles over a line? Is it easy in editing? If there's a stumble, I would get them to re-record the line. Unless a character is meant to stumble and stutter. Say a character's nervous, it makes sense for them to stutter. If there's a stumble, get them to redo the line. But not obsessively. You can edit out stumbles, but 9 times out of 10, you want to use the line that the actor's done themselves. It takes a lot of time to splice together lines. And then I'm going to show you this very briefly as well. Processing and vocal editing, because next stream we're going to go into the nitty-gritty, full-on details of this. Number 1 is a bloody good folder system. You need to be organized with your editing more than anything else, because there's going to be a lot of different cuts, a lot of different takes, a lot of different stages of whether the audio is clean and processed. 2, the first step in it is noise reduction and normalizing. So what that means is, once you get the audio from the voice actors, you're getting rid of the background noise, and normalizing means making it loud without compressing it. So whatever the loudest point is of the thing, it will make it as loud as possible without it being distorted. The number 3, vocal cut. It looks simple, it sounds easy, it's not. That vocal cut part will take you about 10 hours. It takes a lot of time. Once you have the vocal cut done, then you're going to compress it so that the loud bits are quieter and the quieter bits are louder. And then you're going to manually level out the audio as well, because if you do too much compressing, you're gonna kill the dynamics of the show, and it's gonna feel too plastic, and it's not gonna feel real. You want the actors to feel real. You want to keep things as close to the original recording as you can get, because that's what makes a character believable. JJ, the less you have to keep active in your memory, the better. Name stuff as if you'll be having amnesia kicking tomorrow. Yeah, I agree. Pokemon and pancakes. What do you mean you don't operate on final 1, final 2, final seriously, final last, export, this final last one, I swear. You're gonna get scared by my folder structure. It's quite insane. And then 5, once you've done the final... 5 is cleanup. Cleanup is getting rid of mouth sounds. Mouth sounds take forever to get rid of, and you can get rid of mouth sounds. You don't really want to do that. You kind of need to have a few mouth sounds in there for it to be believable, and for your voice not to get too hoarse. Because when you get rid of mouth sounds, you're stripping things away from the voice. So whilst you may get rid of like a click, you're also getting rid of that little bit of their vocal EQ. Because voices aren't just one pitch, one tone. They're an assortment of pitches and tones. And if you strip away like the lower end or the middle end or the top end, that affects the voice. So you can go too far, which is something to watch out in. Over editing can be quite bad in some cases. Not all the time, but it's something to watch out of. So that's it for part 1. So before the stream's over, we are going to go on to a new mode, which is it this one? Hey! I'm going to turn off the music. So if one of the lovely... Oh, that's not what I want to say. If one of the lovely mods can drop in the Audiodrama commands, I'm going to show you scene 1 of episode 1 of the podcast, and you can see the PDF. We are going to be working on this one, which small announcement. M. Regan is one of the writers. For those who don't know who M. Regan is, they are incredible. They've worked on Shadows at the Door. They've worked on The Wicked Library. They've worked on Lift. They're self-published. They're published author. They are the absolute bee's knees, and I have had the absolute pleasure of getting them on this podcast. There's 4 other writers. I will announce it properly, but because I'm showing you episode 1, I needed to kind of say what it is. This is by 2 characters. So one character is Marwick Thompson. One character is Kale. Marwick is male, mid-20s. Again, I asked for the actor ranges to be significantly, not just 25, but anywhere between like 23 to 27. And Kale, mid-20s. However, I got Kale to be played by Faye Roberts. So I kind of fudged it a little. But Faye has a young voice compared to Zer's actual age. So I use Faye quite a lot. But anyway, before I get into that, I'm going to show you... Oh, that's just nonsense. You're going to see a lot of nonsense here. Where did I pull it? We Talk of Dreams podcast. Okay. Folder system time. We're going to get into the folder system time. Name your episodes. Episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put your music somewhere and put your scripts somewhere. And then if you click on episode 1, this is where it's going to start getting confusing. So 1 is the raw audio. This is what I had the actors do. So that's from the recording session directly. 2 is the vocal cut. And in the vocal cut, it gets even more folders. So processed, vocal cut, normalization, RX8, which is the software I use to get rid of mouth sounds. Number 5 is spectrogram cleaning, which is really precision cutting the mouth sounds. And then folder 6 is ready to export, which is here. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but yeah, Faye has been incredible. Anyway, going through the step-by-step process. So what I do, I'm using Audacity. Audacity is free to use. It's open source software. A lot of podcasts in the Audiodrama world uses Audacity because Audacity runs in lots of systems. It's free to use. It's a pain in the ass to use, but you can do anything in Audacity if you have the patience for it. So I did, if we focus on these 2, I got Faye to do part 1 and part 2. Basically, if you're doing a recording session that's longer than an hour, split that up. You don't want audio to be recorded longer than an hour because it risks the audio getting corrupted, and it's a big ass file. So when people upload it, it takes a lot longer. I always tend to split up episodes, audio files if it goes longer than an hour. Like this one is 59 minutes, then part 2 is only 15 minutes. And then what I do is I import the raw audio one at a time. I played in GIMP and Audacity. Yeah, please use your DAW of choice, your digital audio workstation of choice. But this is what I use. Okay, so if I pull up the other actor, Sam, I'll announce Sam soon. I'm not telling you who Sam is yet, but Sam is also incredible. This is what good, healthy audio looks like. So you're going to see, if you look at this audio, you see massive blue lines. And the blue lines are the loudest bits. So the blue lines are the clicks and the claps. So I can see where each scene starts, and also it stops their actual scene, like that's a scene, from clipping. It keeps their actual audio that I'm going to use quiet, and it means I'm not going to have to deal with bad audio. I just remember using Audacity to do what does the Fox say thing ages ago. So yeah, we're going to process this one at a time. So I'm going to get rid of one of them. What I get the actors to do is doing silence markers. So this is going to be quiet. I'll try and turn up the audio as much as I can, but it's still going to be pretty quiet. That's the script. So we got recording. I got Faye to do a silence marker.
3, 2, 1.
And this bit here, no one's talking. They've done 3, 2, 1 clap. And then 15 seconds later, you have to wait for the to get there.
3, 2, 1.
And you clap again. This means I can use this part of the audio specifically to do noise reduction. Hey, Gav. So, to do noise reduction, effects, noise reduction, get noise profile, click that one first, then select the entire thing, effects, noise reduction, and then I kind of do it around 14. I've never once messed around with sensitivity or frequent smoothing bands. Noise reduction is the only one I play with. I kind of stick around 14. Hit that. Then that's going to record. That's going to process the whole thing. That will get rid of, even though your actor's recording setup be quiet, you're still going to hear stuff like computer hum and tiny things because their microphones will pick up a lot. So everything needs noise reduction. Every single recording needs noise reduction. The trick is you only want to use it very lightly, very sparingly. If you use noise reduction really powerfully, then that's going to strip away things from the voice. So yeah, and then what I'll do again is I'll do select, normalize at -1 decibel and click OK. So that's going to make sure that there's no point in that audio that goes louder than -1 dB. So there's 1 decibel. You can kind of see in the audio here that it no longer goes to the top and the bottom. That gives you headway so that nothing's going to clip. One file at a time. And then what I do is I'll select it, export it, export a selected audio. This is important. You want to record and export in WAV. WAV files, that's just the cool stuff. I'll get through here. We Talking Dreams, podcast, episode 1, vocal cut, processed. Anyway, I've already done it because I'm not going to do it now. 32-bit here, 32-bit float PCM WAV file is the highest quality you can get in your computer, and it means the quality of that audio is not being lost. It's big. It is massive. But if you kind of think of it, I don't know how else to describe it. If you bounce at anything less than 32-bit WAV, the quality gets lost a little bit. It's kind of like in the olden days, you'd record stuff from VHS on a tape cassette, and then if you try to record something on that tape cassette, it's going to be worse at audio and worse and worse. 32-bit WAV allows you to export it as many times as you want, and you're going to keep the quality the same as it was. Then you can click save. I'm not actually going to go the full way. Then you can do your metadata. This is Faye being very, very, very nice. Still buzzing. What an amazing session. Thank you so much. Because Faye's amazing. Faye leaves me little notes. That's why I like working with Faye. Anyway, I can't suck and not doing it. Anyway, once you've done that, for every single bit of audio you have, you will get something like that. Ignore these bits, but basically I named them processed, like that. That's step 1 done. That's the noise reduction normalizing done. Now, you can edit an Audacity, and a lot of people I know do. I do not. I go into Reaper, which has a free trial for 60 days, and then I think it's $60 to buy. What we are going to do... I don't want these bits. You guys go there. These are here because I've already done this already, so ignore that. Pretend it's just that. I'm going to get all the files I've just processed, put them in here, separate tracks, and then it's going to pop up with something like this. So then what you need to do is you need to layer everything up. So Faye 2 is going to go there, Sam 2 is going to go there, then Sam is going to go there. What we need to do now is level up, because you're not only doing... Is there anything on that one? Are you just empty? You're empty. So the sync claps not only give you space to get rid of noise reduction, it allows you to sync up their audio. So
3, 2, 1.
like that. But because we're using Skype, just because this bit is leveled up perfectly, if you look here, the claps are not leveled up.
1.
Because Skype and Zoom, there's a delay. So you just kind of have to deal with that in the recording, which means if you have two actors who are reacting off each other, you as an editor has to manually readjust the timing so that it's more natural instead of having that delay in the reaction. Thank you for the hydrate. Yeah, if you keep saving compressed file types, it's kind of like repeatedly taking a photo of a screen instead of a screenshot. You're right. Absolutely right. Okay, so what I've done here, you're still going to see the big lines, and that's because I got Faye to tell me when new scenes are starting. So
Technically, scene 1, take 1.
technically scene 1, take 1, clap. So then I know I can get rid of everything before this click here, because this is where scene 1, take 1 happens. So select, do that, and then I can just get rid of that. And then I know that's the start of scene 1, take 2.
Okay. Sorry, could I just say something?
Oh no, that's Faye giving notes. This is where scene 1, take 2 happens.
1, take 2.
Like that. So now, I know that's scene 1, take 1. I know that's the end of the scene, I believe. Like that. And then
Scene 2, take 1.
scene 2, take 1 is there. So that's all just me chatting to the actors. You can get rid of that. And then you do it for the entire thing. And then you start to separate it. So then you have something you can actually use. This is the most efficient way of doing it and the way you're going to get the best out of them. Because what you generally want to do then, if I get a new track up, I will then put the additional scenes underneath, like this. And then I'll mute these. So that when they're going through the scene, if I say Faye...
What are you doing?
Say Faye messed up the first line. Say Faye messed up saying what you were doing. I can easily cut that bit out. Go to the alternate take.
What are you doing?
And put it back in there. So now we've got that line from take 2 working with take 1. And it's an easy way for you to splice between different takes. And then say an actor stumbles at the first half as a sentence, you can easily cut that and then put that there. Like that. This is just a little overview. We're going to go into the entire detail next stream and how to do this. I'm just kind of showing you the cliff notes right now. So this is a bit of a taste about what the next bit's going to be like. If I go and actually show you... Doors, Reaper... Where would you be? Where would you be? Where would you be? No, not that. Bear with me. That. Date added. So you would be... How long did I edit you? Or maybe I don't... Oh, no, it's that. There it is. Found it. Okay. This is where it gets messy. This is what it looks like when you vocal cut an entire Audiodrama episode. This one and this one, the top two are the only actual ones I used. Every other one is me flipping between takes. And then if you zoom in, you can see where I've done the cuts. So you can see where I've cut the audio to make it longer or quieter. There's spaces because there's narration, or maybe it's the top three. And then, yeah. So, like...
Before their time?
Oh. Why?
I just said.
Yes, I know. That's not what I'm asking.
And that's what you do. I will go into full-on detail next time. But this is kind of just showing you what it's like when you go all out. And then again here, and it looks really bloody complex and lots of little steps, but it has to be. Once you've done the vocal cut like this, then what you do is you're going to export it. I've already shown it to export, so I won't show you again. But vocal cut, number 2 cut is essentially what this is here. So then I've taken all of this information and I've done Kale, which is one of the characters cut, Marwick cut, and then because Marwick does narration separate to talking to Kale, I've had Marwick narration be another character, another audio file. So now I just have 3 bits of audio to work with as opposed to every single little individual cut. Then what I do, say Kale, I'll import it back in. I've taken out every bit of the audio I don't want to use. Currently the audio is at, the vocal cut's at 25 minutes 45. Get that. Effect, compress. This is minimum compressing going on. Let that do its magic. Okay, so it's made it louder, but we've still got quite a significant loud bit there that I don't want. So what I do is I'd normalize it to get it within that 1 decibel limit. Again, I'll go into much more information soon, next stream. But for now, to kind of show you what I do, I use this envelope tool here. And I'll manually go in. See here. And then choose the loud bits and just make them a little bit quieter. I'm not going to play this audio yet because it's spoilers for the actual podcast. So I'm not going to do that. But that's how you can manually do it without distorting the audio by overcompressing. However, you only want to do this lightly because if you do this too much, then the whispers are going to be the same level as the shouts, and that doesn't make for a compelling audio drama. You need to still have dynamics. So you only do it a little bit. So I'll tend to do it for the big peaks, but leave most of it alone. And then to kind of show you what it kind of looks like after that normalized. This is what it looks like after I've manually done that. So now you can see there's still a little bit where bits are quiet and bits are louder. But if you compare that to what it started off like, look at the significant difference from compressing and normalizing. You've gone from really quiet audio, one loud bit, to the audio staying at an audible level and easier to use. So you're not going to have the listeners get jump scared at this point because it's not a jump scare. It's just Faye doing a shouter reaction as opposed to being gentle and soft. Then what I would do, I'm hoping I've not done something in RX8 which I'm not meant to show yet. I think it'll be fine. I think I deleted it. We shall find out. Cool, it's empty. This is Isotope RX8. This is what I use to get rid of mouse sounds. So I'll take the normalized, 1 file at a time, whack in that, and then I'll zoom in. I'll get the mouth declick.
What are you doing? Yeah, yes, you.
And then in here,
It's you.
there's a click. I'll render it. And then I'll individually, slowly...
Yes, you.
Oh, I can still hear you. Where are you?
You.
Anyway, I'll go in individual line by line like this. And it takes the longest time to do. There we go, there's lots of mouth clicks. So here. I'm not sure it's going to pick up on you guys hearing it on a stream. But if you can see these lines here, these are mouth clicks. If I use this, there is no longer any mouth clicks. Oh, you heard it. Oh, that's good. You do that little bit by little bit. Like again here. And then you can still kind of hear it. So then once I've done that through RX8, I then come out again. Go here. Whack Kale in. So this is the audio once I've done it through RX8. Then I'll make it bigger. Then I'll go into spectrogram modes. And then I'll go again and see if I've missed anything.
Pardon? Would you come to the other side of that?
So like here.
Pardon?
This bit here is just noise that I don't need. So I can just edit out that tiny bit.
Pardon?
I can hear my nice headphones, just not with a Bluetooth speaker. Yeah. Once you've done that for every single piece of audio, you go here. You would get these three. Plonk them in. This is where you're going to finally be editing things together. Let it upload. And then you're going to adjust the pacing and the audio levels as a whole, as opposed to just one person. So then you get something that looks like this. And there'll be brief overlaps because people don't speak in isolation. People talk before the other person's finished. So there'll be times when people talk over each other. There'll be long dramatic pauses when they're unsure of each other, like here. And then I may just adjust audio levels. So then finally, after about 20 to 25 hours, you can have it all exported into one audio file. And this here is the vocal cut. One loud bit there. Why are you loud?
One you're thinking is...
Anyway, don't matter. Yeah, and that's how you get a vocal cut, despite that slightly little mistake there, which I missed. And then you send that off to the soundscaper, who could then do number 3, which is a soundscape. Then you do the music cut. Then you get the masters back, and then you're ready to export. Yeah. I was trying to speak in a way that reduced mouth sound. Yeah, no. You're always going to get mouth sounds. Everyone has mouth sounds. The best thing you can do is hydrate before you record. Specifically, hydrate the day before as well, because that's going to make you wake up feeling refreshed. But that's a rundown for now. Next podcast production stream, I'll go into a lot more detail. But until then, that's everything. I'll just get my slideshow up so we can finish the slideshow. Hit. Change. There we go. That's it for part 1. And next stream we'll show you exactly how I edit vocals in terrifying detail. What do you mean staying hydrated will make you feel better, Johnny? I know, right? I know. But yeah, I hope this has been useful. It's just a brief overview over things. There'll be many, many more coming. And I'll be showing the editing. And we can all suffer together. Yeah. In the meantime, thank you so much, Crime Panda, for the bits. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. I shall be back on Thursday at my usual slots. I've forgotten what I'm playing. What am I playing? What am I playing next stream? Oh yeah, Imposter Syndrome. Yeah, we're going to talk about Imposter Syndrome while I was playing Rookie. And yeah, until then, take it easy, everyone. The featured artist of the day is still Banashee because I didn't have time to swap out the featured artist, but there will be a new featured artist next week. If you like what we do here, I'm just going to put on music because it feels weird not having music on. If you like what we do here, you can support us in many ways. You can either be a subscriber on Twitch, or you can donate to us through Ko-Fi and Patreon. And all the money goes towards producing this podcast and also help me pay my mods and future equipment and helps me sort of stay independent. But until then, thanks everyone for coming. Is anyone I know streaming right now? Let me have a little look if anyone we know is streaming. No, no one in my Twitch friends. Anyway, take it easy, everyone, and I shall see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye. Oh, there's no ending screen because I forgot to do the ending screen, so it's just black screen. Enjoy the black screen. Sorry.